majority of the women have no idea they are doing this. They're just doing. They wonder, okay, why I'm so good? I'm the the work bee, and I do everything right. What has been taught in school by parents, by the society. Why am I not rising? And that's why.
That was Jingjin Liu, and this is Roar. Hi, everybody. This is Danielle Davies, the host of Roar. Today, I'm joined by Jingjin Liu, whose work explores how women navigate power, visibility, and confidence inside systems that weren't built with them in mind. Drawing on years of global business leadership, from founding the Elevate Group to investing in early-stage companies and stepping onto the TED stage, Jingjin focuses on how structures shape whose ambition gets recognized and whose labor stays invisible. Her work aims to impact 5 million professional women, not by telling women to be more confident, but by questioning the structures that decide whose ambition gets recognized in the first place. Today, we're talking about invisible labor, power design, and what actually changes and what doesn't when women stop playing by the rules that were never built for them. Jingjin, welcome to Roar.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. It's a pleasure.
I'm thrilled to be here. And for anybody who follows along on, I mentioned this previously, but your LinkedIn page, there's been a lot of talk about LinkedIn not kind of being a friendly place for women at the moment, or women not really breaking through the noise. You've been able to do that. You talk about power not just as visibility, but as design, the way systems are structured. When did you start noticing that women weren't just struggling individually, but were being measured by systems that didn't account for the full scope of what they were carrying?
I think that this is a bigger question, because for individual versus structurally, right? I think my first lived experience is starting in my own corporate career. So I started my corporate career in a very white male dominated domain, which is commercial vehicle industry, and in Germany.
Oh,
And in my mid-20s, and I came to Germany when I was 16. So I was in the country from a very different system from China to white Germany and then learned German for 8 years, and now step into my first role. And then astonishingly made a very smooth, fast, and stellar career in this industry.
right
And
there, you could
I
have
am
stopped. You could have been like, that's it. That's amazing already.
it's funny because for me, I still wonder what happened actually there, because usually when I start like this, or when the only Asian, the only woman, and then I came in the industry, the white man, what the expectation, or at least what you hear the majority will say, the discrimination, the only, and then the break glass ceiling, all, everything what you can count. But I actually did not experience any of them. At least I was not aware. So, and then because I had all my sponsors were men, they actively championed me, and they are all old white men. So I have a big love for old white men, especially in. I really have to say, because there were no young young binary women in the space. They were all decision makers, were solely old white men. They saw me as a rising star. They saw me as somebody is different, somebody is willing, somebody is is ambitious, is everything what you can describe by actually most of the women. But what they saw me, something's different. And I figured out what's that different is much later, to answer your question, why not individual but structurally, is that I acted like them. Not that I was aware, but majority of my traits are like men. Because for example, I just to name a few, just naturally, it has nothing to do with how I break it. It's just I naturally have more male characters. For example, I don't like to, in terms of business, okay, just come to the fucking point. This is what very often when I sit with women, they soften their language, and they broaden their scope, and just probably, I'm sorry, and these are, oh my god, just come to the point. What do you want to say? Because until you say it, I already fell asleep. It's
So
it's
you were
it's
already like this. You already had these character traits. Like you brought
kind
this
of.
with you.
I kind of brought it with me. I mean, that's a deeper conversation. Why, how I become who I become. But all these kind of traits that men appreciate or that men naturally have, which is how you win in the workplace, because the workplace is still designed for men by men. So if you are a woman, but you act or your natural traits are more like a man, the likelihood for you to succeed is just higher. So this is actually the moment where I recognize in hindsight, much later, because I was telling women, these are the ways that how you make a stellar career and so on, until I recognize, oh, most of the things I say or how I say it, how I behave, these are like any man could have said it as well. If you just get a average woman is a outstanding man, I always say.
Yeah.
What she brings to the table, but just because it is so counterintuitive to the decision maker who are usually men, they don't excel. Therefore, it's a structural problem. If you see most of the women are great and ambitious, are great in what they do, but they just don't manage to go up, it has to be a structural problem.
I was going to say, so it's a structural problem, but also how much is their structure, but also how much of that conditioning are women carrying with them before they even get to the workplace? And you mentioned this
Yeah,
is one of the things that maybe you had a little bit different, your own conditioning or your own interactions in the workplace. What are you
upbringing.
seeing from other women that you've worked with?
Oh, just like a good example. I mean, cut this if this is not appropriate,
No,
okay?
it's great. I
I
love it.
see. I think this is because this is going to be about you.
Oh
This is
no.
it's going to be about you because this is my, I don't know, 50th podcast or something. And it's so interesting that how a female host, I never had this with a male host, will start this conversation without me saying anything. I'm sorry, I'm not so put up together today because I had a surgery or because it's a chaotic morning, because of something, something. They apologize with no reason whatsoever, at least from your audience perspective, from your client or whoever you are talking to. You might feel that way, but the person you are talking to has no reference, no feeling, no anything about why you should apologize for anything until you said it. Then I start to pay attention. Okay, is she not put together today? I don't think so. But if she says so, okay, now starting from here, anything you say from now on, because you set up yourself already to fulfill. Anything you are not so put together, you are not so eloquent, I'm going to say, oh, yeah, right, because she said she has a chaotic morning. So now moving from you to everybody else, this happens to a lot of women in meeting context. They start to run a meeting for some reason because they might be nervous or they drop off their kids and something did not go as smooth. They come into the meeting already in a apologetic manner or come into a email with apologetic manner or something that they are already not enough for whatever reason. You're already
Yes.
coming in I'm
Yes.
sorry because 1 2 3. And this is what I'm saying, why I want to raise this, because this is so common. This happens to every woman, from the junior brand manager to the CEO. I mean, it will be less, but I mean, you are a very senior executive woman. You have done great things, but the first thing what happened to you is that you just apologize for no reason.
Wait,
So
and so
sorry.
when you speak to men, tell me, I'm just curious, do they come right on and it's just they're just going. They're totally fine. No apologies, no confidence issues.
But for apologies or for what?
Right.
I rarely see men. Let's just take podcasts or meeting, whether they are the host or I am the host. The men usually, not I'm generalizing now.
Yeah, of course.
The average man come in saying, "How is going? What's up? I'm gonna go right to it. These are the 5 questions I'm gonna ask you. So you're gonna answer, and then there's gonna be conversation style. Are you good with it?" I'll say, "Okay, okay, let's kick off." Let's say in a podcast setting or in any meeting, they're gonna hire you. They don't really care. You say, "Okay, I'm good. How are you? I'm good." Okay, so agenda of today, 1 2 3. I know I'm not saying that women should anyhow act like this, But if, let's say, promotion, visibility, anything that associate to a corporate win are defined by persona or characters like this, then you come in with your warmth, connection, and your what collaborative with everything that women are genuinely good at. You are set up to fail. So the friction is just much higher for women.
It is. And it's funny, I don't even notice that what I did this morning, but I do notice that even in writing, I've taken out over the years, I've noticed there's a lot of I'm just doing this. And I'm like, I'm not just doing anything. So I've eliminated it, but it was something I had to notice that I probably took with me into my 30s. And I was like, this is awful. And oh, thank you. Okay. This brings me back to one of the things that you talked to. The next question is you come back to this idea that women are kind of misdiagnosed, labeled as less ambitious or less ready when actually managing caregiving, emotional labor, or even in the workplace, the invisible labor of smoothing over, explaining, holding things together. Where do you see that misdiagnosis happening most clearly right now?
This is a very complicated question.
Take your time. Take your time.
Oh, so let me paraphrase. So structure versus conditioning, where happens more? Or
Yeah.
can you phrase the question? I think the question is a bit so complicated.
Yes,
I
you're
actually
right.
didn't
And so,
100%
well,
understand.
because I think it's, we're a lot of time, one of the things you wrote about, and maybe this isn't exactly applicable, but it's the first one that's coming to mind, is the woman who's prepping to go on maternity leave. And
Yes.
she's doing all of these things to make it very easy for the next person, because he's supposed to temporarily replace her. It's just
Yeah.
supposed to be her pregnancy leave, but she makes it so easy, and she's maybe in the process being appearing to be less ambitious, appearing to be so easygoing that, somebody else can just slip into her job and take it. So do you see it happening, this misdiagnosis of our ambition happening so because we're conditioned to kind of make it easy, or do you see it happening structurally more?
I think maybe this angle. I think we make things easy for people, so we are more associated with solving operational problems. Because if you think, let's say, leadership, or let's just stay in the corporate context, to rise on top, you have to be a visionary. You need to have executive presence, all these big buzzwords, which is important. I mean, look at Steve Jobs, or look at some of the great leaders. Indra Nooyi as a woman, these are visionaries, and they the primary association people have with them is strategic leadership, long term, solving problem in 5 years, bring the company into a greater stage in X years. Whereas if you make things easy, it's usually operational. For example, if I write a SOP for a task or for handover, I want to make it easy for the next person, but then you are giving them the manual. Operational tasks is easier, or let's say roles that have more operational nature are more likely to hand it down to women, because we are so meticulous in doing everything perfectly, and these tasks need those detail orientation and so on and so forth. And these tasks are also easier to be replaced. And at the same time, nobody on the top C-suite cares about these tasks. They are incredibly essential they are the bricks, they are the foundation of the house. But until the foundation rottens, it takes a long time to the house to break. But imagine, on top the ceilings not there, then people will recognize them immediately. So therefore, I think for women, and then combined with this humbleness, with this, okay, I'm doing great work, but let me not advocate for myself, because we don't like women to, to their own horns, especially not especially, generally women, you just don't, I don't even like them. Somebody say, oh, I did this great job. I was like, oh my God, come on. It's just
Right?
natural. It's just very natural. This is social conditioning. And then it's like, then you kind of wait for someone to recognize your work, first of all, and then your work is not that important for them to recognize. So it's a lose-lose combination.
Oh,
Therefore, and I think why I write so passionate about this in LinkedIn is because majority of the women have no idea they are doing this. They are just doing. They wonder, okay, why I'm so good? I'm the the work bee, and I am so I do everything right. What has been taught in school by parents, by the society. Why am I not rising? And that's why.
oh, and you've actually answered. I was going to say, is this, socially conditioned? Is it volunteered or is it assigned? And I think I'm answering for you, but I feel like it's all three, because
Yes.
everybody's been socially conditioned. So it's not just the women, the men are expecting it. I mean, obviously, generally speaking, because this is what we've all conditioned ourselves into functioning as.
Yeah.
What happens, because you're helping women break out of this? So what happens either internally, independently, or professionally when women start pulling back from that role?
It's a big shift. I think it's a huge internal shift. I think awareness is the number one. So you have to know what you are doing. That's why I'm pointing this out, saying, okay, the first thing you said was sorry. It's like you have to be aware, number one. And then number two, you have to be willing to make a change because the conditioning, the probably, I'm not so sure. These are these are trained. I'm going to be 42 this year. This even for me, this is trained to be. If I'm, let's say, a bit tired, less energy, if I'm rambling, these words just naturally come out. So you have to make a conscious decision to pay attention to what you say, how you say it, and to be to get to be comfortable with the uneasiness because the person you are talking to or you first showcase yourself in a minor different way, that person might not even recognize, but the first person you recognize you. For example, we say, okay, the meeting starts. Let's say I say three things. Don't apologize. Don't say just. Don't say probably. So now
Oh,
you have to, okay, what can I say now? So there will be a lot of uncomfortable pause. There will be like, oh my God, what are they thinking of me now? So you have to be comfortable with the growth in that sense.
okay, real quick. If you're listening and thinking more women should be hearing conversations like this, the best way to support the show is just to follow or subscribe wherever you are. It really does help it reach more people. Thanks so much. Okay, back to the show. And when you start to do that, do you sense, so obviously there's the internal shift, but what about the perception shift? What's that like for the people that you're now kind of presenting this less passive self to? What's the reaction?
Yeah, usually the reactions so and this is also the thing. It's not a black and white thing, as in I am the I am usually very muted. I don't say anything. I only speak up when I'm spoken to. Suddenly, you stand up in the meeting, assert yourself. It's not a 0 to 1. It starts with, okay, just remove the just, or I am going to say one thing at this meeting. I'm going to speak up without someone ask me to. So it's never a big shift. This is the tiny habit that James Clear is saying in Atomic Habits. It's like it's a tiny everyday action a little bit, which leads later on to the you are gonna ask, because now, for example, a woman say, I want to have a visibility in QB in quarterly business review, but she is the the glue in the team. Nobody actually asked her to ever step up. For her to go to her manager saying, I want to have a role in the QBR, that's gonna fail miserably. So she has to build a lot of tiny, okay, remove the just, ask for another task, speak up here, let a sponsorship ask for a special project. There are tiny, tiny steps until she has enough, confidence or enough, let's say, rapport built up for herself, so she can confidently see exactly what I just said, which she could, would she have said it at the beginning, she will set up set up to fail. That's the correct.
Yeah. And it would be
Yeah,
jarring, I guess, for the people
exactly.
who are not used to that. Well, and when you work with women and you're going through these, like, I almost look at them like they're like baby steps, because you're not going,
Yeah.
like you said, from here to here and just, which actually you're reminding me. And I talked to a woman who does midlife work, and she's talking about, basically like reclaiming your time for yourself. And I actually told her, I said to my husband last year on New Year's, he wanted to go to a party. It was New Year's Day. And I mean, I had been doing this kind of internal thought process already, but I guess I didn't take any baby steps. I did. And, it's my husband, so it's a little bit different because we have a different relationship, obviously, than somebody I have a professional relationship with. And he said, well, I really want to do this. And I was like, no. And he was like, what? And I'm like, I
Could
know.
you elaborate?
Yeah, I was like, I'm just not interested. And he was like, you sound a little bit selfish. And I was like, yes, I am. I'm not, that might work. And it didn't really, I mean, it did, because I held my ground, but he was definitely a little bit dumbfounded. And it took some explaining. Obviously, in a professional setting, or hopefully somebody's not going to go from that to that. So,
Yeah.
but where are the
But there
spots?
is one way. I'm just gonna jump in on
Yeah,
that. There is one way to do that as well if you want to. And I also, because this is the concern number one when I tell women, okay, the tiny steps, yes, but also you have to start somewhere, no? Because the excuses will come in. Oh, this is not the setting, or this is not, the
the
fear of
time.
doing the first step. How other people are going to perceive us because we're suddenly different. The fear is very strong, especially by, I would say, more introverted people, women, or women who are, I would say, a bit older. I mean, at my age, they have been behaved a certain way for a significant amount of time. Now suddenly they make the change. For them, it's very scary. What I tell them, a good tip is actually you tell your peers, or I would say the ideally your team, if you work in a workplace where you have enough psychological safety, where you feel comfortable to speak in an intimate setting, or to your people of your trustees in the company, saying, I want to share something with you, because I'm in this year, I want to work on something on myself. Number one is I want to be more assertive, to have more boundaries, to improve my whatever. And I would like you to help me and hold me accountable. So you might observe that I behave in certain situation differently. This might look like I have never spoken up in our team meetings, but in the future, I'd like to speak up without the filler words. I have noticed that you have done a great job in this. Can you give me some tips? So, in whatever way you have a relationship with people, you announce the surprise to them. This has I would say, two positive effects. One is now you come back up, not because you announced it, number
Right.
one. And number two, you will be surprised how people are going to jump in, especially men are saying, oh, I was waiting for you to finally do this because I see you have so much potential, and I wonder why you never present your idea. Instead, let our manager do it. Or why do you explain so, a woman we work with, very funny. She has a teammate who is a man, and she said he mansplain her idea all the time, but always give her the credit. And one day she said this to him. She said, I appreciate very much, our relationship. I like work with you very much. And now I want to be more assertive in my language. And then he said to her, I was wondering when this day is coming. The reason that I always repeat your idea, frankly, with you, is that you don't come to the point. I understand what you're saying, but the majority don't. So I am not mansplaining you. I am man-peating you. I was so amused, and then it was such a light-hearted moment, but at the same time, it also just demystifies certain things. You think, oh my God, that's someone stealing my idea. Not at all. And that because he just want the world to know the great idea she has, but she does not bring to the point. For
This
example.
is this is so refreshing because I feel like so much of, and I'm guilty of this myself, so much of, especially in a podcast that talks about, elevating women in different ways or advocating for women. And so, we're always so pro women that what ends up happening, even inadvertently, is that there's almost like a negative aspect to men. And I'm always like, no, 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 like I have a husband and a son and a father. I love men. I just am advocating for women. But I feel that sometimes men are portrayed negatively. And I love what you're saying because it's so refreshing to hear that when women are in these roles or working to advance themselves in this way where they're changing their conditioning or their behaviors, men have been supportive, rather than, I have to say some of my expectations are that you're going to say, oh, the men have been like, I don't appreciate this young lady and giving pushback, but instead they've been advocating for the women in their company. And it's just refreshing to hear your perspective. I like that a lot. What have you felt about when women actually start to notice this? You said a lot of times it might be older women. Are they in a career that feels stagnant and they're watching their peers kind of move up without them? When do they start to notice that they're kind of the glue, but they're not getting the accolades or the advancement or the career promotion that maybe they think they should be getting?
Usually it's the mid management level where you actually have when you have your first people manager role, but the very first one. I think if I there is some I think the women we work with, we work from all the way from junior to C-suite, but where I think women most it's difficult. There's no, I don't want to say a wrong stats, but my own perception with the women we work with is that two level. One is this, what I said, it's the first people manager role. Now you want to rise to a director something, so you lead people managers. I think that's the most difficult step. I think if you look at the pyramid, all junior women, and then now senior junior women, uh, um, junior women was more not junior women was more women was there for senior manager role, and then now people manager, then people manager of people manager. If you look at here, I think the pyramid became suddenly much more narrow. So this is the first role. So getting from the ground to the next level, and then to the to managing, to the first role of managing people. That's with the hard work, I think you can reach there with the hard work only. Now, when you manage people, suddenly you have a different, people will perceive you differently. You report to someone who is in the middle as well. That person probably is still working on his or her, how do I go on to the next level? So he or she does not give a lot of shit about you for yet. So you have
Okay.
to make sure that he or she has a lot of attention, has a lot of your work matters so much to them, but also so little they can't get rid of you. So you can rise to their level or to another function, but at the same time they advocate for you as well. So now the difficulty is that, but majority of the women spend their 99% of their energy managing their own team and their own work. So they don't manage up at all,
Aha.
which make you entirely stuck. Actually, you can remove everything what I just said before. I think I rambled a lot. This is actually the
No.
key point. They don't manage up at this level. And from there, the higher you rise, manage up, manage your boss's boss, manage your boss's peer. Who else beside your boss knows your work? Who from the C-suite knows your work? The higher you rise, the more important you become. And I think that's something men do naturally, because they have to, for them is back to the stone time. They have to hunt the mammoth. They have one goal. Let's go for it. Everybody just, take your weapon and then let's kill the mammoth. Whereas women, you have to be, okay, there's a fire, there's the kid, there is the elderly, there's the donkey, there is, in the tribe, you are divided. That's why they say they assume that women are so good in multitasking, because you have to do things at many things at the same time. So now in the modern mammoth days, men, if you, let's say, I want to be the CEO, so the only way for me to become a CEO is to manage everything, to go to see, in order to reach the CEO, who is the SVP, who is the EVP, who else do I have to know? So for them, they are very targeted. Whereas when women are in this role, they're like, okay, let's manage down. Let's make sure that my team are well taken care of.
Yes.
Let's make sure that my peers like me. Let's make sure that my direct boss is satisfied with me. Then I say you are one reorga away from being irrelevant. In the moment where your boss is gone, you're gone. And I think these are things, again, women are not aware. You have
So
to understand the
how do
rule.
you manage up? How do you even teach somebody to manage up?
Oh, it's actually
It's
fairly
just a
simple.
whole new.
Oh, it's actually fairly simple, in the sense of, let's say your boss, what does your boss want? What do you think? If you were to incorporate, or all the women you have interviewed, what would be your boss? What does your boss want? Average boss.
Okay. They want you to be success. They want to make more money. They want to be they want to keep going up. So,
Exactly.
right.
But the first reaction is they want you to feel well, which women think, oh no, they don't. Why should they? I mean, you are not. I hate this narrative. Oh, we are one big family. You are not. You don't fire your family members. You
Oh,
know.
right. Right.
So your son can go to prison. You will still love him eternally. Same for me. It's a you won't do this for your workplace. So
Right.
there's no family. Your boss want to go up, want to earn money. It's all about him. So what can you do to make him look good? So managing up, meaning, how can I? So dear boss, how can I make your life easy? This is the mainstream. After you make your life easy, then you set condition, saying, in order to do this, of course you have to prove that you can make his life easy. And then you tell, okay, my goal, my subtlety is going to be, I want to be, not your position, I want to rise at your level one day. I admire your work so much. I mean, give them a lot of sugar.
You are
And
good. You are good. Go ahead.
men are, especially for men are simple creatures. You give them some sugar and they are very happy. So, and then you admire them. Then, so now you're in this position, you make their life easy, you admire them, unless it is a very insecure man, which is majority not the case, because they usually think very high of themselves. They would love to help you as well. It's just genuinely human nature. You want to help someone who makes you feel good and who help you to succeed. Why shouldn't they?
Oh, you're very good. Oh, all right. So say you've got a woman who is recognizing this, right, that they're not moving up, but they don't yet hear about you. They don't have these ideas for like these incremental steps they could do. They don't really know what they're doing wrong, and they're kind of waiting for systemic change. They're like, someday it's going to be different. At what point do you does waiting for systems to change start to become kind of self-abandonment for a woman? Because this isn't just really, this is your career, but it affects your self-esteem, it affects your self-worth. When do you say enough is enough and you start to make these changes? Because if you don't, I mean, that could really be your whole life.
Yeah, this is a very individual decision. I think for majority of women, the one you described, there are many of them. To be brutally honest, the pain of stuck is just not high enough. It sounds brutal. Oh my God, I'm so stuck. I'm not moving up. Then quit. Then do something. You are in control. Complete. We are not talking about the poor African or Indian women sitting there waiting for mercy for some. But we are talking about women who are mostly highly educated and working in the role. Mostly they have a house, they are well settled in their family. And I think the comfort of being there, or the fear of, oh my God, what are other gonna think of me, or the fear of if I step out, go into another role, or ask for another company, pursue another role is much higher than the comfort that they have in their current job. The pay is simply not enough. Because for majority of the women, again, is it's a I should be promoted, I should get that role because I'm good. It's not a must. For me, for example, I think the biggest difference that I said back then, for whatever reason, I want to be the first Chinese female CEO running a Fortune 500 company in Germany. And that back then was a must for me. It's not anymore, but because it was a must, I want to make everything happen to make that happen until I recognized what a ridiculous idea I had for not that I'm good, not good enough, but for different reasons. But for most of the women, the craving for power, for rising, for promotion is simply not big enough.
Do you feel like there's a reason for it? Just that, or do you feel like it's because you said, this isn't, we're not talking about people who were starving or desperate. There's something unfortunate about being comfortable too. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's that you're not driven. I remember my very first real job was at a publishing company, and I met a girl who was more advanced than me when I started, and then I moved ahead of her, and she had been offered many times to move up, and she was like, I refuse. I refuse to move up because I do not want to be in this field. And if I move up, I'm going to get comfortable. So I stay miserable because she was pursuing an education, and she's like, I'm pursuing more education, but if I get comfortable here, I'll get too comfortable. Like if I get comfortable with the comfort, I'll never put myself in that position. And do you feel like that's what it is? And why don't the men get comfortable
Because
as
for men, there's no other option. I think this is also very societal. Now, look, if you say a man who says, okay, I am a stay-at-home husband, thank God it has become more normalized today. But let's say 10 years ago, a stay-at-home husband, oh my God, what a loser. I mean, I mean, seriously, no, 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 not
Yeah,
the men
no,
think about
yeah,
that. He think
yeah.
about that. Women think about that. Everybody thinks about that. Now I'm a stay-at-home wife. Okay. So, okay, of course, female empowerment, you're not doing anything for yourself, blah, blah, but you're taking care of your children, of the house or whatever. It's more acceptable societally for women not to rise, not to do anything. Still, it is, no? But for a man, unfortunately, it's the the option not to succeed or whatever that means is not there. Society is less societally acceptable. Therefore, they have to. And often, when men, especially for example, in Europe, are very often still the own breadwinner. So they will have to
They
feed the
don't have
family.
another choice. Yeah.
Yes. And then whereas in Asia, for example, back in my days, my parents worked very hard because there was, your mom cannot stay at home? Yes, she cannot. Otherwise, I have no food. This is the rural China back then. So somehow women have a choice today, whereas they didn't in the past. And for men, for them, it's getting better, but it's not.
That's a great explanation. I like that a lot. And I want to move over a little bit to your TED Talk because you talk about, you talk, first of all, you've got these incremental steps that you talk about that you can bring to the
Yeah.
workplace, but you also mentioned that if women, like how confidence shows up differently in private versus professional spaces. And so you talk about how you've got to be comfortable in your personal spaces and show your confidence there to be able to bring it at home. How can you talk about how that shows up in the workplace, or about like with some different women you worked with, can be an example of how they started acting on their confidence at home before they brought it into the workplace?
Yeah. So the theory I have is that confidence is a muscle. I mean, this is not a theory of mine, but that the theory I have is most women have married their own glass ceilings at home. The glass
Oh,
ceiling does not start in the corporate space. Majority of the women that I work with, if you look back in their family time. And then they all say they have a very supportive husband. But if you go down deeper, many of them are even the main breadwinner or out earn their husband or um, are actually better professionally than their husband. But still, when it comes to home, this expectation, I'm not saying his expectation, her expectation somehow where they are at home is that she still do the majority, way more than 50% of work or caregiving where it should be. I mean, it will never be 50-50, but it's the majority, the managing the household, managing after 6 p.m. So I always say you have 9 to 5 and 5 to 9. How does your 5 to 9 looks like? Has an immediate impact how you perform in your 9 to 5. Because in
Oh,
your if you don't assert yourself, if you can't even tell your husband to bring out the trash, that's already wrong narrative. If your husband doesn't voluntarily get out the trash unless you ask him, how unempowered are you? How are you going to ask your boss or your peer, let's assume they are men, to do something that is in your that is do something for you or do something that you want them to do? You can't even ask the closest person. Take your example. You said to your husband, he said, I want to go to that vacation. And you said, no. I mean, this is a full sentence, no? I mean, this is very,
I know.
all due respect to you. But it's how many women usually, oh, let me think about it. Let me do this. Actually, it's a clear no. But it's very difficult. It's the nature of women, especially at home, it's not at home, actually everywhere, but especially at home, is adapt, to I want to make everybody else happy. Then I'm happy. We need to kill
Yes.
that idea first, So, and then because when my husband, when he goes down the vacation, he's in a good mood, and therefore I'm in a good mood. The kids are in good mood. The consequences. But it's you already compromise yourself there, and this is again the tiny habit I'm talking about. Before we're talking about tiny habit of growing. Now we're talking about tiny habit of shrinking. Okay, this vacation we go to there today because you didn't. I bring out the trash is your task, but it's 11:30 p.m. The damn trash is still there and it starts to stink. So I'm gonna bring it out. Again, you have done his task because now his memory gonna, yeah, she's gonna bring out anyway. So
Isn't
it's
it
just
crazy?
it's
Because
so
yes, and it's so crazy. You're identifying it all, and I feel like I'm generally pretty expressive and open, but there are plenty of times in my marriage, and then it carries over where you start to think, you know what? It's just easier if I do it myself.
yeah.
And then years later, there's the excuse that you're so much better at it. Well, of course I'm better at it.
Yeah, you
I
trained yourself.
I
Yeah.
trained myself. I took ownership over it to make things easier. For whom?
Yeah.
It is an interesting it is an interesting world out there. And y- you know, not just from us that we're doing it personally and internally in our own homes and with our own relationships, but I would say even generationally, especially generationally, you might have, I don't know about you, but I have one sister. I grew up in a house with one sister and no brothers. So my parents were like,
Mm,
you girls can do anything, you can do anything. We
nice. Yeah.
believed it and we believed it. And so, fast forward to 2017, I was running for public office and I
Mm.
dropped my daughter off. My parents were going to watch my children and my mom made food and I was eating before I went out and my mom said, "Did you make dinner for your husband?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to be out." And she was like, you didn't leave him dinner?" And I'm like, "No, he's a grown man. It's not like he had the kid." And she actually said, "Well, I never would have left my husband without dinner." And I was really snarky and I said, "Well, you never ran for office." It's just so, but it was
Yeah.
conditioned from my own mom who's right there cheering for me and saying I can do anything and trying to support me in that anything, but yet there's an expectation that I'm going to manage it all. Do you see
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
from
It's
the women you work with as well?
A lot. And I would say, I mean, Indra Nui brought this great example as an older story where she said she was already the CEO of PepsiCo. She went back home and the mom was like, are you plan to make dinner? And she said, Mom, I'm the CEO of PepsiCo. Somebody better make dinner. But then mom said, no, but her to her point, she said, you that's that side of the door. Now you are inside of the door. You are a wife. I'm paraphrasing, but
Yes.
essentially, it's the same. So the generational is one thing, but also what our husbands believe, or what we let them believe. Is one thing is like you said, it's a conditioned what we have learned. The second thing is also our behavior send the signal to the other person, to your partner, that what we tolerate. And the boundary, people are saying, okay, you have to have the boundaries, like bang. No, it's the boundary is pushed, so it's like death by 1,000 cuts. A little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. The boundary actually has to be boom in a way. Because when you push this a little bit, they know, okay, next time I'm going to push a little bit, because you already said yes to that, so it's yes to this. You already made dinner last time, or you're already making it, so let's just do it. It's never the big decision. It's rather the small, again, it's the small decisions then which made the partner at home think, oh, okay, she can do it, or she will do it anyway. And I will have my will anyway. She will compromise anyway, because you also set the signal. Because majority, I mean, you said you asked the women I work with, I think majority of their husbands are very supportive, as the definition of, they will let the women have their corporate careers, and they are not saying, okay, you cannot travel to here or there. But these are very basic human rights. Sometimes if I listen, what does a supportive husband mean? And
Yeah.
and then if you really go down to the details of, okay, who does what, and then why didn't you take the role in Dubai? Oh, that required my husband to change job. How many women have changed the job for their husbands? If you ask to the fundamental question that really matters to a woman's career, or to her, let's say, awakening, or to her success, men are not usually the biggest supporter at home, because we also didn't train them to be the biggest supporter at home, because we tolerated a lot of things of their behavior, and human nature is just to push further.
Quick pause, because if you're listening to Roar, I have a feeling you're exactly the kind of person I write for. I send out a Substack newsletter where I go a little deeper, more personal stories, behind the scenes thoughts, and honestly, some of the things we don't always say out loud here. If you want to stay connected between episodes, you can find it at roarwithdanielledavies.substack.com. I'd love to have you there. And now, back to your regularly scheduled podcast. Okay, let me ask you another question. Based on this, do you feel that it's harder to start making the changes at home, or is it harder to make them at work? Because interestingly, I'm like, oh, it'd be easier at home, but almost maybe not. I guess it depends on your specific relationship and how much conditioning has gone on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also based on what kind of persona you are, because for example, the reason that sometimes we don't want to show our most genuine self to the people who are close to us. Reason being, we don't want to be vulnerable, because they are important to us. So let's say, if you screw up at work, okay, worst come to worst, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But worst come to worst, you get fired or whatever, then you have nothing to do with the company anymore. But at home, with your mom, with your dad, with your partner, they're gonna stay with you, for rest of your life, kind of. So you don't want to show them certain vulnerability, because you don't want to be hurt by them, be judged by them. So I understand, actually, sometimes harder, or as counterintuitive as it might sound, it is harder to show, to set boundaries, to ask for things, to assert yourself at home. Therefore, start with the harder thing first, because they will. If worst come to worst, he does not accept who you are, then I would actually question the relationship. Because very often, also 18 years later, he said, okay, now the kids are out of house. I recognize I'm married to the wrong person. You better recognize this earlier than later. So if there is only upside, what I'm trying to help women with why start better at home is that you can't only have upside, because majority of the time that your mom, your partner is supportive. He just does not understand what's your genuine need because you never assert it. So,
Right.
you
Right.
know, so
I
say
think
the damn
sometimes
thing,
we don't know ourselves because we're so used to being accommodating. And, even that no that I said, like a no, I'm not going to the party. And prior, I think that's why my husband was so baffled because prior I would have said, I don't know if I don't really feel great, or maybe we could go for a little bit, or, I really wanted to make some dinner, or,
Yes.
I would have framed it a different way. I would have softened
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just to make it easier on all of us. So, I stepped into that myself. That time was like the full no. So he was like, what's happening here? But I do think, yeah, I think you're right. And I really appreciate this. I want to ask one final question. There are ways to work with you personally, but if for the woman who's just waking up to the fact that she's carrying more than her share, whether in her marriage or in her career, but likely both, because it's probably happening all over the place, even if she's not fully aware of it, but she's noticing things are moving ahead and she's not. What's the first thing she needs to stop assuming? Or what's the first step she can take on her own before even, learning to work with somebody who can maybe help her get from A to Z? How could she get from A to B on her own?
Yeah, I think assuming there are a lot of assumptions. This is
Yeah.
a very
Yeah.
individual question again. If I generalize with the pattern that I see, I think number one, personally, professionally, I start with professionally first. Start assuming that people know what you want, or your hiring manager know what you want, or people who have decision power know what you want. In 99% of the time, they don't. They rarely know your name. Let's just stick to the promotion path, okay? I want to get promoted. And my number one question always to the women is, okay, does your manager know your work? As in, now I give him a call. Can he say, Daniel has done this three great things last quarter? I guarantee you it's a no. Because the manager usually, this is also a pattern for them. If you're great at your work, you are the last person your manager going to take care of. Because when do you go to your manager?
Right.
When you have a
When there's a
problem.
problem. Right.
When there is something, the problem is usually the lower performer go to the manager. So if you are the workhorse who solve everything, your manager was like, oh my God, great horse, bye. She takes care of everything. But he has no idea what you're taking care of. He just know, okay, that house is not burning. Let me go to the other house and pour water there. So he is more likely to know the low performer team member, what they are not doing well, than knowing the high performer, what you are doing well. So stop assuming that he knows what you do. Then ask him, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, and about that, do you schedule meetings, try to cultivate a relationship, or is it, how do you let him know? Send an email, FYI,
Yeah.
I'm
Oh
fabulous.
no. With your manager, this is I think again, it depends on the dynamic, culture
Of course.
differences and so
Yeah.
on. But like when you very generally, you should schedule once a month a meeting with your manager anyway. Could be a coffee chat, could be a dinner. It depends what's the setting. In social setting, people tend to loosen up a little bit, and you have to let them know first what you want. And then this is always the conversations, Dave, now, I have been in this role for 2 years. Now I have the ambition to become whatever, like you or the next role. And I have always appreciated our relationship, and I want to be a manager as like you. Can we schedule a 30 minutes, whatever, or, and then you help me understand how can I get there. Always linked to their success. You appreciate of them, because usually then women will just go there and saying, I've done all these great things. I think I deserve a promotion. So when that happening? Never.
Yes.
you know, you have to make it about them when you don't have a relationship, especially when they don't know, because now you make them feel good, and then now I recognize, oh, this is actually my high performing horse. Now she appreciates my opinion, so I'm going to share my wisdom with her. That's the first door opener.
Okay.
That's like, I think that then you have to take it from there, how that person is, because there are different color of manager, blue, the blue, the red, then you have to take it from there. Depends on the organization and how he reacts.
Gotcha. Well, and I feel like a lot of what you're saying is really, I mean, obviously there's actions, but so much of it is just enlightening about the ideas of the whole process. So much of it I feel like is just taking a step back and evaluating where you want to go and then putting in those steps to get there. Because I think, like you said, somebody will be in there for 2 years and say, okay, I've done all these great things. Why I'm ready, go. And obviously then it doesn't happen that way because,
and I would say, don't wait for resentment, because usually you have the unsatisfaction or resentment, even at home or at work, it's built up. If you were, 2 years is short enough, at least. I have some women working 7 years for that role, and then we suddenly start to talk together. She is suddenly aware of all the things she didn't manage to do, and then suddenly it's all built up, and then they storm into the manager room, says, I deserve this, and then it's set up to fail. Therefore, don't wait until it's never too late, but don't wait until you have built up so much emotional burden inside of you that you cannot have a rational conversation anymore.
Oh my gosh, Jingjin, this is so helpful. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to cover?
Oh, maybe I would say maybe a lot of podcasters like to ask that question. I'm just going to put the question here. Is that they will say, okay, what's the one advice you want to give other women? I usually don't have any advice, but I do think one thing, because I just recently recognized this is a little bit of my awakening, that why a lot of women don't rise. This is only based on Jingjin theory, no data back. This is my gut feel. Is that we do not respect ourselves enough. This is this is a much longer conversation, but if I summarize it very easily, is that we don't respect ourselves enough, which leads to low self-esteem. We don't keep our words to ourselves. Give the easy example: if he cheat, if let's say in the relationship, is my partner cheat on me, I'm gone. What happened with most of the women, I know they have kids, they have circumstances, many reasons, and it's usually if my husband tell me I cheated on you, I will say, okay, let's sit down and settle how we do the kids. It's a no. And this is a boundary. This is a self-respect, because if you stay for whatever reason, you actually don't respect yourself. This is a much bigger thing, no? But also same is for promotion, for workplace. Very often, going back to what I said with the resentment, with the things that they promised me promotion 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Why do you stay? You are not loyal to yourself. So to any success, you have to be loyal to yourself. And I think women fundamentally, myself included, just suck at it. Because we are so badly social conditioned to make other people happy, to be loyal to others, to be satisfactory to other people, to feel other people's need, we actually forget the person that we need to look eye into eye with is yourself. And that's where everything starts.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You know what? I just read one of your posts and you said something and you're like, you don't have any respect for yourself. And that's like a very gut punchy statement to read, because at some point in everybody's life, you have something where you're like, I should have advocated for myself more. Or you look back at, maybe you're young and a teenage girl, or you're, whenever it is, or maybe you're an adult woman. There are always situations where you're like, I could have done this differently, or I should. And that's what it stems from. It's the lack of respect you gave yourself or you had of yourself in that situation. And I feel like the last thing I would say in response to that is, my goal is, as a mom to a daughter also, is that we really, and a son, but that we really hopefully show them or help them develop that self-respect at an earlier age that, I don't necessarily know that that was something that was cultivated in my upbringing. It wasn't like you need to have there were a lot of things. You need to succeed. You need to do this. You need to be nice. But nobody said you need to go home and make sure you can look at yourself in the mirror. And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you. I really like that. And I'm going to include in our show notes some links to some of your LinkedIn posts, but also your TED Talk and your companies and your website. So thank you so much for being here and your generosity of spirit. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Danielle, for having me. It was a great conversation.
It was. Thank you. Thanks so much for our conversation, Jingjin. I especially love the way that Jingjin put language to something so many women experience at work, but don't always say out loud. That tension between wanting to show up fully and navigating spaces that weren't necessarily built with us in mind. Next week, we're shifting into a conversation that's also personal about identity, reinvention, and what happens when you start telling the truth about your own midlife in a deeper way with Ellen Scher. In the meantime, if you are nodding along to this episode, share it with a friend. Thanks for listening, as always, and see you next week on Roar.